everyone, and welcome to the Auto Guide Show. This week, we speak to Paul Cowland, we compare two hybrids, and there's some new EV news, and Volkswagen finally fixes an issue. But first, a word from our sponsor. Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need, at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love. All right, so kicking things off is a comparison that Kyle quoted as saying one he's looking forward to the most this year. So I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, oh man, I hope that doesn't set too many expectations. This was the Civic Hybrid Hatchback versus the Toyota Prius. Now, this was a big deal for us because the Prius has been kind of incredible since it got its refresh, right? Since this current generation landed. It's stylish. It's fairly fun to drive for what it is. It's a little expensive, but it comes with available all-wheel drive. And of course, it's a Prius, so it's incredibly fuel efficient without even really trying. And now the Civic basically does all of that for a better price.
I was going to say the Prius, like, it got more power, better economy, and it's way more stylish, so it warrants its price. But as you just said, then the Civic steps into the picture.
Yeah, and the big advantage for the Civic is that it's basically an Accord in terms of size. So interior space is way better, especially in the second row versus the Prius. The Prius, you're actually paying for that style with less space in the second row and in the trunk versus the previous generation, slightly less. Whereas the Civic is enormous. And because it's the hatchback, it is super accessible. It does look a little weird, as we as we talked about. The sedan looks great. The hatchback, especially when you open the hatch, it just kind of looks like half the car's not finished. It just ends very abruptly.
You know what it reminds me of? The BMW 318 Ti that we had here back in the mid to late 90s, where same thing. It was like it was a 3 Series BMW, and they just stopped after the hatch and just cut it off. It looked so disproportionate. And this thing has this giant hood, which you don't think it needs. And
yeah, it's like
one more thing, because people I know are probably already saying, like, why did you pick the Prius? Why not the Corolla? Well, Civic sedan hybrid, Corolla hybrid. I mean, it's not really going to be much of a contest. There's two different powers and price and everything, and there is no Corolla hatch hybrid, which makes sense because there's the Prius. So that's why I went with this one.
True, we could have done sedan versus sedan. But I mean, the whole point here, too, to add to that is just like, what car defines hybrid? It's the Prius. And so Honda has tried on numerous occasions to take down the Prius. And I think this might do it. I mean,
it's their best shot.
Yeah. And it's unsurprising that, Honda's targeting 40% of Civic sales moving forward will be hybrid. And I don't see why not. This is a better engine than the turbo model it replaces. It makes more sense for most people. If you still want a sporty experience, you can get the SI, and then you have to have a manual. There is no automatic option. But beyond that, I mean, this is great. I got close to 60 miles per gallon when I picked this up and brought it home. Of course, that went down throughout the week because we had to deal with snow. But yeah, it's all the car most people need most of the time.
40% of sales. It's like Honda has 2 out of 5 trims as hybrid only.
Yeah, it's weird.
It better do 40% of sales. But yeah, that turbo engine that we literally liked in the Civic, it's gone unless you get the SI. And I mean, that's still used in some SUVs, so it's not like it's going to disappear yet. But it's a good car. But I just disagree that when I think hybrid as the defining car, it's clearly the Chrysler Aspen.
Oh yeah, that's right. Shoot.
So on to another hatchback that I wish I could drive. You covered this. The Volkswagen ID Everyone. How clever. Is been debuted, and we're not going to get it.
No, because it's affordable and fun looking. So why would we get that? We can only get expensive EVs. This was
it doesn't weigh 6,000 pounds and have 700 horsepower. So why would we want it?
Yeah. This has, I think, under 100 horsepower.
It's like the
But you know,
original Golf.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And you know what? Looking at the size of it, it's actually not too far off that either. It is a little under 4 meters long. So what is that? 12 feet? It's small. It's a little bit bigger than
Yeah.
the Up, but it's smaller than the Polo. Both of
Okay.
which are vehicles that no one in North America really is familiar with. But it's yeah, it's adorable. There's talk in the press release about how they intentionally tried to give it a face. And so you have these pupil-like headlights, and the back has this carve out in the bumper that kind of looks like a big smile. I This is what VW does best, right? Like no other mainstream brand really does personality in the same way that VW can. It's just for a long time it didn't. And I think now with the buzz getting, well, so much of its namesake, I think VW has a little more confidence to actually do this sort of thing. And I'm excited for it. Hopefully, the production one does not have this silly name, though. The slightly larger one is the ID to all. And really annoyingly, the to all is number two and then all lowercase all. Whereas this is all capitals for every.
ID3. Yeah, I don't know. So back in the day, people in North America specifically weren't really into little hatchbacks. They couldn't gain ground. And then Volkswagen brought over the Golf and it sold like crazy. And in the 80s, little hatchbacks were everywhere. Like this could do the same thing. But in today's day, there's too many analysts and marketing companies and people that they would go to, check the market that they figure they won't sell. Whereas just take a gamble and see what happens. I mean, maybe it catches on, but I get it. People be like, electric car with like whatever, let's say it has 200 miles of range, which is still pretty good, but 90 horsepower, no.
It has 250 miles of range. Sorry,
Oh,
that's a lot. No, 250
I would,
kilometers.
okay.
So
Still,
155
that's
miles of
good.
range. Which is fine. I think the thing for like, because I remember growing up, you and I are pretty close in age, where it's like a lot of people in the neighborhood back in the day had little hatchbacks as their second car, and this would make a ton of sense in a city or even in the suburbs where you have your main vehicle that does your long road trips. It might be a hybrid or full gas or whatever, but this for doing little things around the city looks like a great experience. And because it's an EV, the interior space is actually on par with the Polo, even though it's smaller.
I mean, I drove this car here called the Fiat 500e. Like it's the exact same sort of idea. And this would have a bigger dealer network and maybe convince more people. And it'd all come down to price. If it's priced like the 500e, even though it's affordable in relative EV terms, yeah, it wouldn't fly here. But if you could knock that down like 10 grand, then
I just realized for people who are listening and not watching, yeah, I should probably point out this is gonna start around 20,000 euros, which exchanges to $21,000 in current US dollar pricing. That would be an incredible deal.
yeah, because the Fiat's in the low 300s, like the Leaf. Or 300s. That's a real expensive car. Low 30s, like the Leaf. So,
Yeah,
yeah, everybody, not everybody, but so many people say, I'd get an electric car if it was priced better. Or if they price them regularly, well, here's your car. Like, if you're going to buy anything like a Venue or entry level Corolla, like, there you go.
yeah.
All right, and moving from one EV to another end of the spectrum, Volvo kind of surprised. It's kind of surprising us a lot today. I think just today they said they're going to make more wagons, which is awesome. But this is their electric car, which is so confusing with their new names. So EX is SUVs, and ES, I guess, is sedans, even though it's
Yes.
not
So
like
S is
swoopy.
sedan or saloon, and then
Okay.
C is coupe, even though of course it's not actually used on any coupes.
Yeah, this almost looks like a coupe with its rear back window area, but at first I was kind of thought it looked a little a Polestar like, but it does have a swoopier roof line.
Yeah, I mean, looking like Polestar is not that surprising for Volvo. The Polestar 2 is basically just a rebadged Volvo concept. Yeah, the ES90, I think it looks interesting. It's strange. I think the Polestar vibes are also because it rides kind of high, right? It rides higher than a traditional sedan. has a taller body. It seems like the Toyota Crown is just ahead of the curve here. Uh, but I mean, I can't be alone in wondering what's the purpose here outside of just putting another model on the EX90's platform? Because you know what cars never sell well for Volvo? Their largest ones.
Yeah, I mean, I
Ever.
guess it's because they're one of the companies that's still sticking to that we're gonna try to go all electric soon. They haven't really reversed, and I get it because they're kind of
Well, they did.
not they're not lost, but they need a new identity, like one that they can really stick to with all the changes over the last 20 years with them bouncing from ownership group to ownership group and rebadging Fords to working with Jags to all over the place. But anyway, one thing you said, and I've noticed it too, and I don't get why. EV sedans always seem so high, like tall and big. And I don't know if it's on purpose to try to give a crossover-ish appearance or if it's because of the skateboard deck of batteries underneath, but it's a trend I don't like. I mean, make an SUV or make a car. Don't try to make something a crossover.
I feel like you and I were talking about this recently, where cars. You look back at cars from the early aughts, where crossovers hadn't quite taken off yet, and so every new generation of car had to be more spacious, right? Like you ended up with something like a Fiesta sedan, which had really unfortunate proportions because it was like, well, we need to make sure that people can fit in here. And I think now that SUVs are the dominant thing in the market, cars should go back to being sleek and like it's a choice now if you're taking a
Mm-hmm.
car over an SUV. And so this kind of this I mean it looks fine. I mean I really like Volvo's current design language. It's just the height is a little odd.
Yeah, and like I said, it's a choice, but I get it because when I myself even get in little sedans or even mid-sized ones, I'm like, oh, I gotta like step way down and the roof's closer to me, and it's like, so I think they're trying to give people the SUV feeling inside with the sedan body, which just doesn't work. And by the way, the Crown was not the one that was ahead of the curve.
I
It was
know,
a
I know.
Toyota,
It's
but it was the
sus.
Echo. It was
Oh,
the Echo.
oh, I thought you were gonna say in terms of high riding sedans,
Oh yeah, this the
Subaru
legacy
had the
sus.
sus.
No, I'm
Yeah.
talking about the proportions. I remember the Echo
Hmm.
came out, looking at it and being like, that is the dumbest looking thing. And then you get in one and you're like, oh, there's so much space in here. And then you open the trunk and you're like, this is huge. And
Yeah.
they fixed the styling to make the proportions fit more, but that's sort of the model that everything followed after. Even though you may not think it, like, yeah, everything became much taller after that.
Yeah.
All right, and our final story, because we have so much to get to this week. Volkswagen has finally listened to, I'd say customers, journalists, writers, dealers, random rental car users, that having no physical buttons for infotainment system and having weird sliders that don't always light up isn't a good idea. And they're going to put physical controls back. So they've
This
done the Honda.
this definitely has nothing to do with the Euro, is it NCAP? New rules that are coming in for safety where there needs to be some physical buttons. That definitely doesn't have anything to do with this, right?
Yeah, I mean, good. I hope everyone does that. This is going off on a bit of a complete tangent, but I'm driving the GR86 right now, and it has that old school. I don't even know if it's Toyota's or Subaru's screen. It was like the one they got from Panasonic, and
Mhm.
it's so out of date. But it has a volume dial, a tuning dial, and like 6 or 7 hard physical buttons to change things. And I'm like, I don't care if this looks old. This is so easy to use.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, like, stop letting the designers do all this. I know that part of it is a cost cutting measure. It's much easier to
Mm-hmm.
just stick one
Mm-hmm.
screen than have all these different buttons. But one of the I don't know if it's a good or bad thing that you get into something like a Kia. And I'm sorry, Kia, for throwing you out here because we're talking about VW. But a lot of modern Kias have more or less the same infotainment now, right? They have the touch screen, and then below they have that little swappable screen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like you kind of lose this intermodal identity by going from the exact same setup in every car. Whereas before touchscreens were so popular, if you got into one brand's lower model and you got into their higher one, there could be a whole different style and everything. And that really gave each car a different personality. And now it's like, it's kind of nice that if I get into a Golf versus an Atlas, I know what I'm doing, but
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want more individuality.
Yeah, well, like I said, it's all cost because back in the day they had to pay for the touchscreen and the buttons, and it still was cheaper. But now they're selling these units prepackaged.
Hmm.
So Volkswagen is just buying this screen from another vendor and they just install it and everything. Subaru does it too. I mean, a lot of companies do it now, but yeah, bring back more buttons.
Yeah.
I think it's coming. I think we may have hit peak no buttons. Like, I mean, Tesla's been doing it forever, and I think people that weren't enamored just because they thought they had something different and cool have been commenting now it's not a great setup, and the EX30 we just had is like that. So yeah, hopefully we're at the point now where we start bringing stuff back.
Here's hoping.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will take a short break and then I'll be back with Greg to talk about garage heaters. And then we welcome back a segment that's been off in the off season for a couple months. And then Kyle will come back and we were going to talk to a UK motor journalist, TV producer, car collector, basically living the dream.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Auto Guide Show brought to you by eBay Motors, and we will be back shortly. Swapping out your tires? There's nothing like it. With eBay, you'll find the feel you're looking for, from smooth highway rides to grip for rough terrain. Get all the tires you need at prices you'll love. eBay, things people love. Welcome back. We have Greg returning to talk about some great new products. What's the topic this week?
Garage heaters, the best garage heaters. It's still pretty chilly. It's first week of March here. And if you want to spend some time in the garage, maybe getting that classic that hasn't been on the road in about 4 or 5 months, it's nice to do it in a space that's almost as warm as your living room. So that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, not many garages are insulated with the house. Mine isn't. So yeah, it's pretty cold in there 4 or 5 months of the year.
Yeah, so we've got a great list here, all sorts of different things from, I would say, glorified space heaters to hardwired gas, like powered, natural gas powered, full-on garage heaters. And the one that I actually have in my garage, it came with the house. So I felt really spoiled in this, to this effect, is one pretty similar to the Mr. Heater one that's on our list. If you scroll all the way down there, it takes a minute to kind of fire up and warm up. But when you do, it could get nice and toasty. It reminds me about 7-8 years ago, we had to do this big picnic table project. We had to build a picnic table straight out of like lumber and things. And it took me and my brothers-in-law a couple different nights to do this. And it was in like probably this time of year, actually. We fired that heater up and it was great. Now, I think it's good too to like remember some safety things as well. Like I like to have somebody from the gas company come out and check it out. Maybe every few years. It's not always like an every year thing for me, but you definitely want to treat it like a high maintenance appliance like it is. You want to be aware of it, make sure it's working right. So when you need it, it's ready to warm up your garage and, keep things ready for, cruising season's coming up soon. So if you want to maybe work on like an oil change in the comfort of your garage, or, check out that maybe new set of rims that you ordered and, around Christmas or something as a gift to yourself. And you're like, hey, time to put them on, warm it up. So it's a good thing for me, I think.
Yeah, I have a tiny garage, so it's not like I can really ever do much work in there. But if I had a nicer one, this would be a must because there's not a lot to do in those cold winter months. So you could be out there tooling away on whatever project you're planning to get on the road in the spring.
And there's some different ones on here as well, depending on what sort of environment you're working in. I have like I would say a normal sized garage, 2 cars, nothing huge. But the guy before me, I think, worked on motorcycles or something. So he wanted his garage to be in, comfy, cozy shape. But you can certainly go for something less elaborate, like this Mr. Heater propane radiant heater. That's a nice setup. It'll go up to 875 square feet. So, I mean, that's actually quite a bit of space, but much more smaller. You don't have to like mount it on like from the ceiling like mine is. So there's a bunch of, I would say, interim situations as well. And, with this really like cold winter, we've had a lot of snow, a lot of ice. I know people have really gotten back into space heaters, which it seemed like those kind of went out of vogue for a while, but I hear people all the time talking about them. So again, you want to mind safety with these, make sure whatever type of heater you're using, wherever you use it, is up to code as it affects your local, area, that it's working properly, that it's not just too old, all those good things, because safety is I think, even more important than comfort.
Yeah, those are some very good points. And if people want to check out the list, it's on AutoGuide.com, so they can head on over. We thank you for joining us again this week, and we'll talk to you next week with some new products.
See you later, Mike.
Picture this. You're in the garage, your favorite room in the house, and you're tuning up your engine with parts you found on eBay. Every piece is just locking perfectly into place. You step back to admire your work, hands covered in grease, and because you're committed to driving that thing further than the odometer can handle, you start to think to yourself, you know what, I could probably also use some new brakes, some shocks and struts, and this baby deserves a new air filter. So you head right back to eBay. You can find any part you need there, it's unreal. From wipers and headlights to cold air intakes, exhaust systems, and even that turbo you've had on your mind. eBay is the stocked garage of your dreams, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. Because eBay knows DIY fixes can be major, and mods are always intense, so you need to know that these parts guaranteed to fit every time before you dive in wrench first. And in the off chance you order a part and it doesn't fit, send it back, simple as that. You know what you love more than the car itself is driving it. You're serious when it comes to engine maintenance, and you're locked in when you're headed into a build. And that's exactly why you start with eBay, minor fix or complete overhaul. You want to get your ride back on the road, and you've got eBay Guaranteed Fit. So eBay created My Garage, where all you have to do is add your ride's info and get the exact parts that fit. When you see the green check, you're a click away from that part clicking perfectly into place. So now that you know all that, imagine standing at that open garage door looking at your car you love more than anything, knowing that anything is possible. Whether it's keeping it on the road forever or turning it into something that's never been on the road before. Because with eBay, your garage just got a whole lot bigger. Get all the parts you need at prices you love, guaranteed to fit every time. eBay, things people love. Okay, so on the Auto Guide show brought to you by eBay Motors, we are bringing back a segment because it's that time of year. So once again, let's welcome Colin Wood to talk F1.
Hello. Glad to, yeah, I love it. Glad to be back. I'm very excited. I guess Drive to Survive actually dropped when we're recording this today. I've not, skipped work to watch those yet, but I'm sure I'll get a couple episodes done before the day is over. So
I think I've hit that point of becoming more of a diehard fan where I'm not that excited about Drive to Survive. I'll watch it, but I'm not racing, whereas I'm super excited for this year and next year. I think these are going to be two of the greatest years just with what's going to happen.
I totally agree. And yeah, Drive to Survive is kind of like, I really view it as like, there's a lot of nonsense, but it's a little season refresher almost of kind of the things you maybe forgot about last year, although I don't think I forgot about anything. So, but yeah, this year is shaping up to be very exciting. I think like I figured I might as well do a little recap before the season starts of kind of what people need to know. And there's obviously lots you need to know, but the biggest thing, if you got the slide, Hamilton to Ferrari, obviously, right? That's kind of huge deal. And looks like he was quick, pretty, got used to the Ferrari in the preseason testing. So
it looks so weird.
It's
photoshopped.
It does look weird. Odd thing I noticed going through like because this is taken from their Twitter page, that there are very, very few photos actually of Hamilton where you can see his face in the Ferrari outfit. I don't know if that's on purpose or there's tons of Charles, but almost all the Hamilton shots are with his helmet on. I just thought that was like an interesting. I don't know if that was on purpose or not. But yeah, so that's obviously huge. As a result of all that, science is over at Williams, which I think maybe the most interesting story of the preseason testing is that he actually set the fastest time, which I know there's a lot of BS and everybody's sandbagging and maybe it doesn't mean a lot, but that's still pretty shocking that a Williams would do that. So could bode for the future. Who knows?
Yeah, like people are testing different layouts and parts and whatnot, but teams that are terribly out of it, even in testing, like last year Alpine and stuff, you can tell. Whereas this year, everyone was all over the map except for Haas looked pretty bad.
Yeah, Haas looked bad, and I think Sauber was bad too.
But Sauber, I mean, they're just kind of hung out to dry until next year.
They are, right? And we know that. And so there's kind of like no expectations, which is like good and bad, right? It must be nice to like have a season where you're like, hey, there's no expectations. But as a guy who wants to like go out there and like race to win, that has to be soul crushing. To basically know you're just spending a year phoning in. I guess you really spend your year trying to just beat your teammate. That's what you do. That's my focus.
Yeah. And speaking of which, at least Hulkenberg knows he's there with the new car still, like next year. So it's worse too if this is your last year of your contract and you're on a team that's just, phoning it in.
Yeah, for sure. I guess what are the other big stories we need? I mean, I think McLaren / Lando Norris favored to win the season, right? Had a great, fantastic season last year and probably would have won had not Red Bull sort of, gobbled up the first 4 or 5 races of the year. And then I think the other big thing, obviously, is Perez is out and Liam Lawson's in at Red Bull, right? So we'll see if that turns out to be much of a story or not. I mean, I have to think Lawson will do better than Perez did last year. It's like he lost his mojo or something and lost his seat as a result. So
and out of F1 as a result.
Yeah.
Which
right? So
obviously everyone had already locked in their drivers, but I wonder if he was released mid-season, you'd potentially have been picked up somewhere.
He could have been, right? So it's almost like, I guess you live and die by the sword in F1. So maybe should we do some predictions of the season ahead? That's my photo for later for something else, but that's okay.
Just quickly, with the Red Bull, I mean, every time they get a new backup driver, or not backup, a secondary driver, we're like, they'll do better, and they never do. So, and the car's worse now. So poor Liam's kind of behind it to start, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I agree. So I mean, if you want to do my predictions here for driver and team, so I feel like the obvious driver champion is Lando Norris. I'm going to go on a limb and say it's going to be Max Verstappen again for some crazy reason because they split all the points between them. And team champions, I'm going to say Ferrari.
Ooh,
I feel like.
Well, you got Charles and Lewis. I think this year, I got a couple little predictions, but I think this year is going to be tight, unlike other years. I mean, last year kind of tightened up at the end with the 3, but yeah, I think Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, Mercedes, I think they're all going to be bouncing around up there. And I think some of the other teams may surprise us, like Williams may grab more points than we expect. And Running Bull, maybe they figured out what's going on with their cars and they're going to do a little better. So we'll have to see. For champion, I'd probably go with the favorite, Norris. I also like him, so that's like just pick him anyway. But my prediction is I think this year could be like the Pro Senna years where Piastri is just as fast and they could be both up there trading wins and podiums and points. And like you said, they may split enough that it let someone else sneak in. But I think like Ferrari, I think there's going to be both drivers right up there. Be like George, Max, Ferrari, and McLaren.
Yeah, and if Norris is going to win the championship, he needs to just bury Piastri right away, right? Like he needs to win like a couple of races right off the bat and make that gap really big so that there are no, you got it really clearly early on, set the tone of, hey, all the points should go to me immediately in any situation so that he can set that tone. And if he can, then, good on him. So.
Well, that's what hurt him last year. I mean, if they did that, he probably was champion and he didn't make one or two mistakes. Like, it's crazy how, even though the points gap was big, it's like one or two little things would have really turned it around. But
yeah.
Can I make a prediction for the year after?
Sure.
I just thought of it. Cadillac's going to beat Haas in the Constructors' Championship next year.
There you go. I'd agree. That sounds pretty smooth. Unless Haas gets bought by Toyota and because they have
Toyota Haas.
Because Toyota sponsors Haas.
I know, GR.
And so I could see them totally sitting there quietly and they'd be like, yeah, we're going to buy the whole thing and get back in Formula 1. I could see that happening.
I wonder what engine they'd use. I wonder who's they'd use to start, like Cadillac. Like, the Toyota and Cadillac, I could see both making their own down the road, but
yeah,
not for next year.
No. I mean, they have the Ferrari partnership still, right?
Yeah.
So I could see that still going.
And that's not stepping on any toes. Mercedes is like stepping on Lexus and Honda. Well, that's obvious. So yeah,
but
Ferrari's
Ferrari to Toyota, there's just no comparison, right? So it's pretty simple. So what about you got a prediction of a worst team? I shared mine already, but
Sauber, and there's no fault of I don't think anyone on the team. It's just they're not getting the resource. Like they're funneling it all to next year, which is probably the right thing to do when you're a brand new team coming in.
Yeah,
I mean, like Cadillac coming in too, they don't even have a team, so they can already start. If you focus on the season at all. Like, what's the point? You're just kind of throwing money away.
Yep, I think we agree on that one.
I got one for you though.
Sure.
Who do you think will be the third worst team? Because we kind of agree Haas and Sauber will be the bottom two. Who's going to be just ahead of them?
I think Racing Bulls.
I think Alpine.
You think Alpine? I feel like Alpine will pull something together this year.
True, they got better and they switched engines and stuff, but they also lost one of their drivers. I know they still have a decent lineup, but I think it is those two. Which is weird that we're just assuming Williams is automatically into the mid pack now.
Yeah, right.
I mean, they got the drivers, and they seem to, even at the end of last year, started to get a little more competitive. Albon was in the points quite often.
He was, and they have great, like they've locked up all these great sponsors, so there's lots of money coming in there. They actually seem like this current management team that knows what they're doing and has an ambition to win. James Vowell, it's like a lot of the package seems really solid. Like it's amazing what money does, right? Like somebody somewhere says, I want to win. I want to at least do a whole lot better than this, and we're going to spend money. I guess this isn't working for Aston Martin.
I was going to say, what about Aston Martin? And then I thought, I forgot. That's bad. I kind of forgot about them. They're my third worst team. That's the way they were going last year. Like, hopefully Lawrence, went into the team and just started cleaning house or something, because your car shouldn't get worse as the year goes on. That's what it seemed like last year.
No, well, and Adrian knew he's there now, but it's not going to have an impact right away. It's probably going to take a whole year. He's really there for the next year car, right? So
that's what's so exciting about next year. Because if they come out flying. All right, how about your wild card prediction for the year?
Okay, my like just crazy overall. Yeah. I predicted Carlos Sainz wins a race.
Oh, I'm going to go one higher. I was going to say I predict Carlos Sainz is somewhat in the championship picture, like not first or second, but he'll be like in the top 5.
Wow.
If they play him as the team leader, like I don't think it's going to happen, but it'd be crazy for Williams and him if they could.
Cool. Yeah, I think we were going to talk about rookies, but I know we're running along, so maybe we hold over the rookies for next week, and we chat about that after we've watched the first race and see how they've done. So that was my picture of Kimi Antonelli there waving at us saying, hey, rookie of the year over here. So we'll see.
It's crazy. 2 years ago, so many rookies. Last year, the only time ever the grid didn't change at all. And then this year, all these rookies, as all these teams are gearing up for 26 and beyond.
Yeah. It's great competition, a little bit of chaos thrown in there. Can't wait to watch it. So
yeah, like I said, these next 2 seasons are going to be so fun, because this one, it happens at the end of every development of a car. Everyone's getting pretty much on par because there's only so much you can do, and everyone copies each other.
Yep.
And then next year, it's starting from scratch, and Alpine comes out as a dominant car. You have no idea who's going to be the one that gets it right from the start.
Yep. Yeah, it'll be great.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, and we will talk next week and for the season. It sounds like.
Yeah. Woohoo.
Yep.
See you later.
See you. All right, welcome back. This week we have a very special guest joining us from the United Kingdom. If you could just introduce yourself and what you do.
Very special. I think that's overselling it massively. But hello, lovely audience. I'm Paul Cowland. I am the host of several car television shows here in the UK, Savage Hunters Classic Cars, Motor Pickers, and a few others. But I would call myself a professional car enthusiast.
I think that's a lot of us. We bounce around like I've been reviewing cars, working for an OEM, worked at a dealership, all sorts of things. But yeah, that's a good title. I'm going to use that from now on. They say, what do you do for a living? And I say, I'm enthusiastic about cars.
Yeah, well, that's it, isn't it? I think everything we all do, the cars is the glue that holds it all together. But what makes us talk to people and go to events and all that kind of stuff, or look on the internet, generally speaking, is cars, isn't it?
Yeah. So before we get to where you are now, which is like living the dream with your collections and shows, what got you first into cars? Was it family, or is it just something you yourself got into?
I think it was definitely family. So I'm very fortunate I was born into a car family. So my dad was a car nut, all around the house with car magazines. Every Sunday morning he was out on the driveway, taking something off, putting something on. So that was the world that I grew up in. And of course, so my first thing that I had to buy was Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels. So I collected those as a little kid. And now I'm just a big kid. They're just a little bit bigger and a tiny bit more expensive. But it's the same mentality as when I was 2, pushing cars around the carpet. Nothing's really changed. They drive now. That's it.
You're just pushing around the garage.
Yeah, there's a lot of that going on as well. Not all of them drive as well as they should or could.
So I'll call it something one sec, but it's funny you say that because we had someone on last week, and it's actually one of my best friends growing up. We've known each other since we were infants because our parents knew each other. And he works for Ubisoft doing car audio for video games, and I review cars. And we're two kids that, as kids, played video games and looked at car magazines, and we never grew up.
That's a fun job doing car audio. We did that once with Codemasters over here. So one of the clients that I worked with had a dyno cell. And Codemasters were doing various driving games. Of course, they wanted all the cars to be authentic. So they were just doing dyno pulls and miking all the cars up. And it was really interesting to see the detail that these guys go into to get it right. So that's a very cool job.
Yeah, he went through all the dyno stuff, and it's crazy. It's way more involved than you'd think.
Yeah, because an engine sounds different under load, doesn't it, than it does under revs. So it's good that they actually factor that in. It's a good nerd factor.
Yeah, it's not to get too sidetracked here, but I was talking to an audio engineer for a different racing game years ago, and they talked about the advantage of having electric cars nowadays is they need to record tire sounds, and they're like, oh, with an electric car, I can do that pretty easily.
Yeah, that's true.
Never really thought about that. And it's like, oh, yeah, that, okay.
Also, how boring are car racing games going to be when all the cars in them are electric cars? They're not going to sound very good, are they?
It's funny because sorry to hit Kyle. It's funny because he worked on Legion's Watchdog, and the designers of the game wanted, he said, everything to be electric, and he's like,
what?
That's not going to be too exciting. So he
never playing that game.
Got to put the different sounds in the cars and stuff because he said, it's going to be kind of boring if it's just screeching and glass smashing and nothing else.
Yeah, the engines are what make cars. I mean, especially obviously your side of the water, you have proper engines and proper cars over there. We're losing all our V8s now, which is so sad. But you still have them all. You have a lot of them.
We're slowly losing them compared to what it used to be too. But there's a definite community, especially in the U.S., that I don't think you could ever pry the V8 out of their hands. We'll see.
I'd like to join. Please send me their details.
Yeah. So I mean, actually, that kind of leads me to my next question, Mike, if it's cool. I grew up reading a lot of British car magazines, Paul, and so for me, it was always like, the forbidden fruit of wanting those vehicles that were sold across the globe. Was that your case as well, as being a kid growing up? Were you just like, give me the Australian and the American V8s?
Well, I think, isn't that all car collectors though? I think all car collectors want is the thing that they're not allowed to have. So it's interesting that Yanks and Canadians love British cars. I think it's really interesting that, a certain element of British car collectors love American cars, and I certainly do. So I collect a lot of American cars, and I have a lot of American cars. And I think that just comes down to the stuff that you watch and read when you're little. So I watched a lot of American TV. So shows like Knight Rider, A-Team, Dukes of Hazzard, all that kind of stuff. And that massively swayed my car taste, watching that stuff on the telly. And muscle cars and anything cool. And the sound of a V8 to me. So I think the most prevalent engine I have in my collection is probably V8, just because I think they're the best sounding engine.
Well, and like you said, they're a little more rare for you, so people want what they can't get.
Yeah, exactly that. Well, then my daily drive at the moment, you'll be proud of this, guys, is a Jaguar XJ8, which is just a bog standard cooking spec V8 Jag Saloon, 1998. A bit thirsty, but just kind of bowls along, wafts along. It's just lovely.
I still talk about the XKRS that I tested right before they died and how much I love that thing. It's just so loud, but comfortable and fast. And yeah.
Well, while I've got you both on, come on then. What do you think from your side of the water? Because you are the export market that we need. What do you think of the new Jaguar? Come on, lads.
We don't know enough. It's my
That's so diplomatic. That's the sound of a man trying to make sure he stays on the press list. I love that.
I know it's a box and it's electric, but until I see what it looks like inside or does, I think Jag had to do something. I don't know if this is it, but they had to do something.
Would you like the concept, though? Do you like the style?
Yeah.
There's a silence.
It looks like what would happen if Disney made a new version of Cruella de Vil.
Yes.
That's what I feel like the car is. The pink probably doesn't help. But yeah, I'm with Mike in the sense that Jag needed to do something. I'm trying to be optimistic because I will say that more people have talked about it. More non-car people have talked about Jag to me in the last 2 months than the past 10 years. So that's interesting, but I don't know if it's long-term. I don't know if they're going to be more than this is a cool thing and maybe TikTok people will like it for a month and then it'll just disappear.
It's really interesting because I do quite a lot of work with Jaguar over here and Jaguar Classics. So Jaguar has a huge classic division doing some wonderful work. And like you say, they had to do something. They really had to shake things up and get people to look. But the research they did was they looked at the Rolls-Royce owner profile, and they found now what do you think the average age of the Rolls-Royce buyer is now?
It's under 30.
It's slightly over 30, to be fair. It's nearer to 40, but as you say, it's much, much younger. So what they're trying to do is create a car that on your way up to your 300,000, 400,000 pound Rolls Royce, it's the car you buy on your way up to buying that, which is quite clever because there is a gap there.
It's your first car at university.
Yeah.
We kind of have said this before, and he just alluded to it, is what's it going to be like after its first year? Well, after all the celebrities and athletes and influencers buy it. And that's what Tesla's finding out right now with the Cybertruck. They can't move those things now that all the people who wanted one want one, because, I mean, I don't want one. I'd rather drive anything. So, yeah.
But that's it, isn't it? I think Jaguar, I hope it has more longevity because it's a brand I'm massively fond of, and I do love all of the products that have gone before. And obviously the concept is going to be very, very harsh, and then I guess the production car is going to be somewhat watered down. It's normally the case. But I don't know. I think they'll sell them. I really do. I think people like the badge. I think the rebrand will kind of get comfortable quite quickly. It's amazing the things that we don't like the sound of or sound ridiculous. And then when you've sat with them for a bit, it's like a song, isn't it? Some songs you hear, you love straight away. Some songs take 5 or 6 listens. I think that car might take 5 or 6 listens, but then people will love it.
And I think
sorry, go on, Kyle.
Oh, I was actually just going to say, Mike, like a brand that you really enjoy is Cadillac, right? And I mean, at the turn of the century, when Cadillac went sporty, it seemed very strange and very angular, and this isn't going to make sense. And now it's just assumed. Like we are very fully integrated with the idea of what Cadillac is now.
It's true. Cadillac Alante, that is on my shopping list actually. If you can send one of those over, that would be great.
They're cheap here. It's just the shipping. Yeah, but I remember when the Catera came out, it was like an Opal, but we were all like, "This is a Cadillac. This isn't good." But then they fixed it. I just want to go back to one thing real quick that you said that totally resonates. So when I was in high school, 17-year-old, my school band, we had this program with some high school up in Harrow, I think, in England. And we did a swap. So we go there for a week, they'd come here for a week, and we'd bill it, and we'd tour around. We went to France and Scotland. So I bought this.
You're massively disappointed. No, you got Autocar. Look at that.
So I bought this, a 98 issue, not really knowing what it was, just getting into cars, like, more than just my Hot Wheels and video games. And I read this thing to death, and I was like, all these cool cars overseas, because, TVRs and all that. So yeah, like that really got me into it. And we're Japanese car obsessed in North America because of all the stuff that you got some of it, but we got none of it back in the day in the 90s. And then want Dodge
we got
vans.
The UK DM stuff, and the JDM stuff is so much better than anything we got. That's the thing. Everything JDM is just so much better spec, so much better tuned, so much better equipped. So UK stuff was good, but the JDM stuff is so much better.
I think Australia got the best of both worlds, but that's far away from us too. So, not trying to fast forward too far, but how did you get your start sort of in the, I guess, the media side of the industry?
That was a complete fluke, really. So I was a tuner in the early 90s. So I started selling cars in the mid-90s. I used to work for Saab, and then Saab and Subaru we had at our dealership, which is why I love Saabs and Subaru so much now. It was sort of brought into me from a very young age. And then in the early noughties, I started tuning mainly Subarus and some Mitsubishis. And as you do, you build show cars, you get sponsors, you kind of liaise with magazines to make sure you're getting coverage and features and all that kind of stuff. And I used to build these amazing relationships with all the publishers and all the magazines. And it got to the point that the companies like iBack or Toyo would come to me and say, look, we're launching a new spring or we're launching a new tire. You know all the magazine guys. Could you talk to them and could you get it in the product section? It's like, I could do that. Then anyway, to cut a very long story short, I sort of fell into automotive PR that way, just by being the PR guy for a lot of the brands that you'll have heard of. And that was it. And it just kind of went from there, really. And then when you're doing the PR and you're writing, and I've always been a natural writer, just you end up doing features and stories of your own and then columns, and it just goes from there. And then from the written work came, again, by complete fluke, I think because I was cheap and available, which is how I get most of my work, came the telework. And it's just gone from there, really.
It's funny. I don't think we've talked to a single person yet that was like, I got into this industry because I was determined to do it from day one. I went to school for it and I got it. Like, that's not my story. It's not Kyle's. Like, that's everyone in this industry. It's again, that car enthusiasm. If you have the passion, you're going to kind of fall into it in some way. If you don't, it's kind of hard to fake that and you don't really last.
Yeah, it's so true, Mike. And I'm with you. There's so many people I've met in the industry. It's the enthusiasm that pulls you in. And there's so many things that I've kind of wanted to get. And actually, it's funny enough, so many cars that I've wanted to own where that kind of manifestation, that visualization gets you there. You don't know how you're going to get there. All you know is there's something that you desire or something that you want to do, and somehow everything aligns and your hard work sort of pulls you towards it. And I think that's how I've got into the automotive industry, really. It's not talent.
I think you're selling yourself short.
Yeah, a little bit.
So you brought it up, and we could talk about this probably for 7 hours, but let's talk about cars you've owned in collections. So let's just talk about some.
I haven't got time for that. It's a 45-minute podcast. Couldn't even do the ones I've got now.
So you have quite the collection, and I mean, I know because we've been talking for many years, and I know the Subarus because that's sort of what got us connected in the first place. But
yeah,
maybe just highlight a couple of the really cool or unusual stuff you have right now.
Well, let's start with weird stuff then. I mean, there's a load of stuff that your listeners will be like, yeah, I've got one of those on the drive, mate. So I've got, Corvette C3, Corvette C4, Dodge Challenger SRT, Mustang 5-litre GT, Knight Rider replica, a really cool car called a Pontiac Tojan, which I'd really encourage people to Google. Have a look at that because, and you should be proud of this, America, it's the first production in very heavily inverted commas because they made 136. The first production car that did 200 miles an hour. And all it is an F-body Trans Am with a fiberglass coach-built body by Russ Knudsen, who's a very clever guy, styled by the Hot Wheels team, and it really looks like the Hot Wheels team. Harry Bentley Bradley did it. And then Gale Banks did the engine. So Gale Banks did one of his basically Bonneville spec detuned or marine power, 1,000 horsepower detuned to 800 horsepower. And the car did in Nebraska in 1984, 206 miles an hour. So that's quite cool and American.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
cool you have that.
It is mad because it was always assumed the prototype was lost because they made 135 standard production cars, and of course they all had normal V8s. One had a supercharger, but the other 135 had standard small block 350s. But this thing it's worth a Google. It really is. It's got 2 dustbin-sized turbochargers, and on pump gas it's 800, and on race gas it's 900 horsepower. And everyone goes, yeah, whatever. Then if you look at Gale Banks at Bonneville in the F-body Trans Am, I think he did 253, 254 in basically a stock Trans Am with moon discs on and a couple of gurney flaps. You think, yeah, he probably did. He probably did do that. He's a genius, that man. He really is. So but then I've got all sorts of really weird stuff. Subarus, super weird Subarus. The 360, which is the first one, that looks like a Fiat 500 and a Beetle had an interesting evening. Then there's the XT Coupe, which I got from America, actually, because I can't find any rust-free ones over here. I've got the SVX. I've got the GLF, which is a bit like the car that Jackie Chan drives in the Cannonball Run. Very, very similar shape to that. Mm-hmm. And then all sorts of weird stuff. I've got Saab Sonnet, lots of old Saabs, particularly the body-kitted ones. Just all sorts of weird stuff. Loads of air-cooled Volkswagens. It's got to 85 cars now. It's got completely out of hand.
Yeah, I don't think that's out of hand. I just wish I had the space for that. But the XT,
right.
I wish I had the space for it. I'm borrowing it at the moment.
Just cramming them. What C4 do you have?
It's a really interesting one, actually. So it's a manual. So it's facelift. So it's Mark II manual with the Getrag gearbox in it. Mm-hmm. Just a simple, just the 350 again. Seem to have a lot of 350 cars. Just really cool. It's got the luggage rack on the back, which not many of them have, which is quite a rare. Because they have no boot, do they? C4 cabs, they have no boot, which is bizarre.
Yeah, you just have that storage behind the seats, kind of in that window. I love the post sort of early 90s when they got the 6-speed proper transmission and the engine was up to 300 horsepower. Like, it's funny because those cars didn't get much respect. Now people want them. Like, I want a 96 Grand Sport, but the money on those are insane now, and it's not that special, but it's got that thing to it now.
Yeah, if I could get a nice ZR1, and I know there is a beautiful one over here. I mean, obviously that's a different gravy, isn't it? The ZR1, it's very, very quick. Mm-hmm. And, it's basically a baby supercar, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's one of my favorite cars.
Yeah, I think they're amazing, but I just don't think I can justify one now because I gave $7,000 for this C4 cab, and it is mint. Absolutely beautiful. And the guy to sell it put a new mohair roof on and 4 Michelin pilots to sell it, and then had the wheels refurbed and diamond turned. I thought, you're my kind of guy. Anyone that puts 4 Michelins on, diamond turns the wheels and puts a new roof on to sell it. Proper bloke.
Yeah. So, is there anything in your collection that you kind of look at and you're like, why do I still have this?
There's a lot of them, I think, that actually. And if you ask Mrs. Cowland, she'd probably say that about 75 of them. The problem is the reason I have so many cars is I get really bored of individual cars quite quickly, but not to the point where I want to get rid of them. just to the point where I get distracted by something else. But I know if I park it in the corner of the garage for a few weeks, literally, I'll be incredibly interested in it in about 3 or 4 weeks' time. And then I'll read every book and watch every YouTube video and read every road report ever written about it for 5 weeks. And I'll get bored of it and do something else. So that's why I have to have so many cars, because I just literally just jump from one to the other, whatever interests me on that day. And also, it's a bit like, as you can see, I'm not particularly fashionable. But what I love about cars is wherever you're going, if you have a huge amount of cars, you always have the right car to take to whichever meet it is or whatever the event is, or the person that you're going to see. So I dress very badly, as you can see. But in terms of the car I pull up in, should we meet at some point, it will be perfect for that occasion. It doesn't have to be flash or impressive, but it's a car that I know that you'll like, or it's a car that will start a great conversation. Or if it's a French car show, I'll have the correct French car. Or if it's a Japanese car show, I'll have the right Japanese car. So it is helpful. You can dress in the appropriate automotive apparel.
I think this should be the new advice that something like GQ gives out, right? Is you need the right car for the day. I think people are missing this opportunity.
Well, it's true, isn't it? I mean, I've got a Saab t-shirt on today, I think. Yeah, Saab 1990. I generally wear some kind of free t-shirt that someone's kindly given me, a DC hoodie, some knackered old trainers and jeans. That's me every day, unless it's kind of like a wedding or something, I might make a bit of an effort. Or court, something like that. I make a bit of an effort. But then the car was always right for the event.
Car's always in great condition.
And I'm not.
Just throwing whatever clothes. Yeah, no, I mean, putting on jeans means I'm going out for the day and doing something fancy. Since I
sort of view clothes as a legal requirement to stop me getting arrested, really. That's about it.
Yeah. I have a different sort of question. I wasn't going to ask which of your cars is the favorite, because that's, like picking kids. But does Mrs. Cowland have a favorite out of all of them? You said that she probably thinks 75 aren't necessary, but I mean, there's got to be a few that she likes, right?
She does, to be fair, she does. She loves the Mustang, which is a 2019 5-litre GT, and that's the only car I've ever bought new. I've only ever bought one car brand new. She wanted to have the experience. I've sold thousands of cars, but I've never been the one that goes in as a punter and puts my money down and buys a car. And in 2019, I did that. And it was a great experience, actually. The Ford garage here in Nottingham is very, very cool. And they did me a super, super deal. Very good deal, actually. And, I still have that car. I'll probably never sell it. She loves that one. I've got a lovely 997 GTS, which I think is probably the best 911 ever made. It's the perfect sweet spot. It's got everything in it. And that's nice because it's a paint sample Riviera blue with painted tunnel, loads of other cool options and stuff on it. She likes that one. I've got a flat nose 911 as well, which she really likes. So she likes the more obvious stuff, to be fair, but she has great taste. I just bought her recently a wide-body Z3 manual convertible, which she loves. Unlike some Staggerdo Z Futuras, it just looks really cool. So she's got good taste in cars.
Yeah, the Z3 was so nice, and the Z4 was kind of interesting.
Yeah, Chris Bangle doing Chris Bangle, wasn't it, basically?
Yeah. I still have a very big soft spot for the Z4M Coupe, though. I mean, I still think it's incredible.
Car. That is a good-looking car. I can't disagree with that.
I like the Z3 M Coupe better. The roller skate. I really love the look of that thing.
Well, yeah. There's one in my building, and every single time I drive by it, I'm just. Oh.
They look good, but the wide body, it's amazing, isn't it? When you see a wide body next to a narrow body Z3, because over here at the moment, the Z3s are really quite cheap. So this is a really nice 100,000-mile rust-free car, loads of individual options on it, and it was 3,300 quid with the crazy wheels and the nice suspension on it. The thing is, if you got a narrow body, it would only be like 500 quid cheaper. I think I'd rather have the fat ass. It really was.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm start sure buying cars in the UK.
Yeah,
right.
We can ship some over, guys.
Yeah, I'm
just very good over. In fact, I work with an auction house called Manor Park Classics here in the UK. I'm a director of 2 auction houses, and we are starting to ship a lot of really cool British stuff. Every sale, we sell at least 2 cars to America, generally California, generally West Coast. There's a lot of very tasteful people. There's one guy in New York, I think, bought an Escort XR3i. So just like, how cool is that an Escort XR3i is going to be driving around New York? I was like, I am here for this. It's brilliant.
Dang.
Yeah. So we talked about what you currently have. I'm sure you had sold some cars at some point. Is there anything you ever parted ways with, and to this day you regret it greatly?
Hugely. Can everyone get out their small violins, please? The tiny, tiny violins for this story. I had, back in the early noughties, when I was a Subaru tuner, I bought my dream car. It still is my dream car, but I'll never be able to afford another one. a Subaru 22B, which is not a homologation special because they didn't actually need to homologate that car, but it's a car that was kind of made in celebration of the rallying. So it's kind of like a homologation car. And certainly in terms of how the market seems to view them, they're being viewed with the same kind of absolute reverential delight that most homologation cars are. And because of that, and because of the scarce numbers, they obviously go for fortune. So I bought it in 2001 for 22 grand. I sold it the year after for 27 grand, thinking I was an absolute amazing car dealer. And then obviously now I could easily stick a nought on that, easily. And then if it was really nice, probably double that figure. I mean, they are £500,000 now, those cars. So if you ever wonder why I'm such a crazy hoarder and why I don't sell anything, there's an innate fear within me that the next car that I buy and sell was a 22B. And I've just basically let my pension drive off down the road with someone else.
As a Subaru fan, that is the holy grail of Subarus. That is the car everyone wants. And like, I've sat in one, but I've never driven one. But oh man, the fact you even had it for a year is awesome. I mean, my biggest regret's a Subaru too. It's an SVX, which
we had a conversation off air, didn't we? I've still got mine. You'll be pleased to know. If you ever find your way over in the UK, you're very welcome to come and drive mine.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to come see this various garages. I guess it's not a garage.
Listen, I like my garage. I've had to build one next to it. My friend David, if you're listening, David, thank you. He lets me keep a lot of his place. I've got about 16 or 17 in there. We've got some on the drive. We've got some outside the garage. Just they're all over the place. Some are being painted. Some are being trimmed. So you've always got one in someone else's garage somewhere waiting for work. And obviously the trick is to get them to do that work as slowly as possible.
Yeah. No, I don't want to pick it up. You keep it again.
No,
You're like the only customer who doesn't want their car.
Yeah, it's fine. Do the job you want to do. You know, if it takes a month or two, that's absolutely fine because it's free storage.
That person ahead of us. I have two more questions, but I'll let Kyle go ahead first if he has one.
No, you go, Mike. You're on a roll here, and I'm still just thinking about the 22B, so I'm distracted.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I'm trying not to think about that. Like if someone asked me my 3 favorite cars of just random, all for different reasons, it's like the Plymouth Superbird with the giant wing, the XJ220, and the 22B. So the fact you own one,
XJ220 is the thing. Have you seen the original design concept as well? Because the production car is very pretty, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Although it's a bit of a Marmite car, we call them over here. You love them or you hate them. But if you've seen at the Jaguar Daimler Heritage Trust, which is at the British Motor Museum in this country, there's the original concept where the door's got a slightly nicer proportion. It's just the whole thing is a little bit more amazing. If you ever come over here, I've got to take you there as well because it's just the most beautiful car. It was an amazing concept, that car. It really was.
And it had the right engine in it.
It did. 12 cylinders.
Yeah. There's I can't remember is it the LWB or the one that got the wing and is a little longer? There's one that drives around here, a yellow one.
The
TWR.
They did like an upgrade tune one, didn't they? Which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one that drives around here every time I see it. I want an original more than the TWR, but I still look at it and I'm like, oh, that's so nice.
They're just amazing. Just amazing.
So you the TWR. Oh, no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the TWR just it makes it more aggressive and it doesn't hit the same way.
Oh no, you learn with me, guys. Anything that has a body kit or extra wings or extra flaps or scoops, I'm in, basically. TWR. Because they did an amazing XJS. We did a TV show actually, and it broke my heart. So we bought on our show a Jaguar XJS, which was a pre-HE, which is the kind of the pre-high efficiency, which is a bit of a joke in itself. But it had a full TWR body kit on, which, to be fair, a lot of dealers did fit in the UK for Jaguar. So and we took everything off for the TV show and put it all back to standard, which the purists love. And then I'm taking off these Speedline wheels and these TWR spoilers. This is sacrilege. We should leave them on.
Yeah, that was a nice looking kit too.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, that is a really cool looking car. It's nice to see the XJS is making a bit of a comeback now. Actually, you've got people like Chris Harris has bought one. Obviously, the Kaiser, he's done his project with Fergus Walkinshaw. Mm-hmm. And suddenly XJSs have become really cool again, which is great because they were considered incredibly naff for quite a while. And now all of a sudden everybody wants one. Can only be good.
Yep. It's like any car gets old enough, it suddenly becomes collectors. Over here, the K car was the worst car like ever. And now people want them. And
the cars anyone,
yeah. And if anyone drove one back in the day, they're like, why? But yeah, like some really weird cars that become collectors because they're just getting old.
Yeah, it's true, isn't it? But it's just nostalgia, isn't it? We all want the thing that we kind of went to school in. We all want the thing that our granny had or our dad drove or whatever. It's just that makes you feel warm and fuzzy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you've owned a lot of cars. I want to see. You said they're very unusual. I'm going to throw some manufacturers and see if you've owned one, and Kyle, if you have any you want to think of. So I'll start with an American, since you have so many Americans. Have you had an Oldsmobile?
I've never had an Olds actually, but I helped a mate rescue one not that long ago. I have just bought. You'll appreciate this, lad. So I do love Chrysler cars. I love GM, but I do love Chrysler cars as well. So I've obviously got the Dodge. I've got the Plymouth Prowler, which is hilarious because I have a Viper, although that's a Chrysler Viper, which is weird. It's a European spec one. But then I bought the other day a 1956.
Yes, I remember that.
I bought a 1956 Plymouth Belvedere Coupe the other day, which had in America a $100,000 restoration, and ended up over here having followed the $100,000 restoration. And it is absolutely the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. And what's great over here at the moment, 50s and 60s cars are really softening off. So there's not massive demand for them. So obviously you can buy them for a lot less money than you could even 10 years ago. So they're not expensive.
Same thing here. The muscle car craze of the early to late 2000s is kind of dying off because the people are getting older, and those cars that were ridiculous money are starting to come down a bit, which is nice because there's I could take a Buick GSX or Olds 442 maybe down the road in my life.
Oh yeah, that's it, though, isn't it? Although the old what's it called? The one that was in the Super Bowl is going to come to me.
Oh, the GNX.
The GNX, that's it.
Yeah.
I can't imagine they're going to be cheap anymore. I mean, they weren't cheap anyway, were they?
No.
Really?
No, that's one's got crazy because it's our generation that wants them. So until we get old and get rid of our cars, even a Grand National is getting stupid in price. Like the T-Type's the only one that's kind of left.
Yeah, because I mean that's just such a cool car. So you can imagine that's the thing about pop culture, isn't it? As soon as like a rapper puts it in a video or it's in a film, it is amazing how those cars can come back though. I think it's great that if the cars do get cheaper, it's not great as obviously someone that collects them because in a way it's your pension. But if it means that younger enthusiasts can afford to get into cars they couldn't before, like over here we see with Austin Healey's and E-Types now. E-Types were 120, 130,000, and now you can get a nice one for 40, 50. That's great. More people can enjoy them.
Yeah, and that's what we want, right? It's getting the next generation interested because it's tough.
Yeah, because if all these cars just sit in collections and never do anything and never get seen by anybody, never get enjoyed by anybody, and just go up and up in value to the point where no one can afford to ever buy one, there's no point. There's no scene. It's great when cars kind of fall out of favor and become more accessible to other people, and they've had the moment in the sun. Because I think if you buy cars purely to make money, I mean, I'm hoping that some of my cars obviously give me a payday when I'm old. But that would be a lovely thing. That would be the bonus. That's not why I've bought them. And if I end up losing some money on some of these cars, it's not ideal, but it's not the end of the day. It's not why I bought them. But people that buy cars purely to make money are completely missing the point of how much fun you can have with cars, really.
Yeah. So I mean, if anyone is listening who owns a first gen NSX, you should probably just get rid of it. And if the values tank, that would be really, really useful.
Yeah. They're never going to be worth anything, those cars, those first gen. Then who wants those? Like, especially the manual ones. If you've got a manual first gen, just get rid of it. It's going to be worth nothing.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Please
do. He bought a manual first gen
at the AutoGuide.
He bought it in I think 2010 or 11. And he paid 40,000 Canadian. And at the time I was like, that's insane. Like, what are you thinking? And now they're like 200-300. So, I mean, he got in sort of at the right time. Okay, so I have a car.
So just talk about that. So Subaru, so it's not quite the same as the 22B, but 7 years ago, Drew, my co-star on the show, he bought a really nice 22,000 mile, just a WRX, so a UK Turbo 2000 it's called over here. Manual, pro drive rear wing, speed line wheels. But 22,000 miles, absolutely immaculate Concours quality car. It's 3 inches of service history, and he paid 11 grand for it. And at the time, I was looking like, you're mental. They'll never be worth 11 grand. And I bought it off him because he was going to drive it through the salt. So I said, you can't do that with that car. And I bought it off him. I gave him his money back, basically. And then now, I mean, fast forward 7-8 years later, that's probably a 30 grand car. And you just think it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, Japanese stuff, I think, is in a real sweet spot. 90s and noughties Japanese stuff at the moment. If you have a nice example of any of them, you are sitting on road and also it's just so bloody usable as well, isn't it? It's a car that you can drive every single day. It's got an airbag probably if it's a late 90s car. It's going to be reliable. It's going to start and work. You can probably get most of the bits for it. That's a car you can drive every day.
Well, speaking of Japanese cars that aren't reliable, in the late 2000s, I bought a RX-8. And at the time when I was looking for used ones, the RX-7 turbos, like the FDs, were about the same price. And I was like, I hear like so many nightmares about those. I'm gonna get an RX-8 because it doesn't have the turbo. It'll be a
Because it's
little
so
more reliable.
reliable. Yeah.
Yeah, mine wasn't. But I look at the FD prices 15 years later, and I'm like, I should have bought one.
It's
Because
just
they're like poison back then. No one wanted them, and people could get them for like 10,000 Canadian, which was nothing compared to what they are now.
I know, but it's all the same. All the Skyline prices, all of the A90 Super prices. It's just all telephone numbers now.
Yeah, and to import them to here, they bring like the most beat versions of Evos and STIs, and people still pay for them. But then the person who imports it gets kind of stuck. So you can pick those up, but you need to know what you're doing because there's going to be 1,000 problems with them.
Excuse my cat. My cat wants to be on this podcast hugely. You stay there. There's no fee for you.
That's okay. That's been a trend. We had someone else. Yeah.
There's 3 cats in the house, and they like American and Canadian accents, so they might wander into frame.
Yeah, we had Matt Farah on last week, and his cat appeared. And my dog usually barks. So far, luckily, she hasn't. Okay, I got one last question before we let you go. Since you're a Chrysler guy, this just came to mind. Have you ever owned any of the Lancia rebadges?
Ooh, I haven't, but I love that stuff. I love it when you get weird and wonderful rebadges, like the whole kind of Saab Subaru thing. I found absolutely fascinating. Obviously, having worked,
I had a Subaru. I had a
Did you?
92X turbo. Yeah, Aero. Yeah.
No, that's the car I'd really like, but I've never had any of the wacky rebrands. I'd love the Saab Lancia. That would be a very cool thing to own as well. But no, I haven't. But anything that's misbadged or rebadged, I always think is brilliant. So we had things like the Land Rover Discovery, I think, was a Honda in certain markets. And
yeah, the first, was it Passport, Kyle? No, what was it called?
Yeah,
it was Passport.
It's so random, isn't it? I mean, I'd love to be in the meetings where someone goes, I've got a great idea.
Sorry, Honda had the Trooper. The Isuzu Trooper. Yeah.
I've got a few of those as well. I've got 2 Mark 1 Troopers and then a Mark 1 Bighorn, which is the JDM version, which is an That's so cool, honestly. So that came from the factory with wide arches, fishnet Recaros, 3-piece forged split rims. It's one of the coolest trucks you've ever seen. Google that one.
An Subaru Bighorn?
Yeah, it's called an Ermshire Bighorn Mark 1. There's one sold in America for like $30,000 or something ridiculous.
They sold it as a Subaru Bighorn in other places too. They just badged that thing all over the place. It was technically Subaru's first SUV, but it wasn't theirs.
Yeah,
obviously.
do love a Trooper. They're an awesome thing.
Chevy sold the Forester in India for many years, which is so weird. And it was just the Forester with the Chevy bow tie on the front. Like, yeah, really? There's been some really weird. I mean, my favorite is they imported the Cavalier to Japan. Such a terrible car, but they liked American cars so much. Toyota sold it as the Toyota Cavalier, and they put amber turn signals in, and that was it. And I was like, whoever bought this must have.
There were even TRD parts for the Toyota Cavalier, which just is mind-blowing to me.
It is. But the one that always makes me laugh, though, so I have a Subaru BRZ, which I do think is one of the greatest sports cars of the last 20 years in terms of like pound for pound and what it can do, especially if you do a few mods to it. And of course, whenever you drive anywhere in your Subaru BRZ, everyone always does the joke, oh, yeah, nice GT86. But the weird thing to me about that whole relationship was, even though that they knew from the beginning that it was going to be 10 GT86s for every BRZ, they still made it in gun mode. They still made it in the Subaru factory, which was really weird. And then what's super, super weird, if you pull like the GT86 badge off the Toyota, it's got Subaru part number on the back. So all the Toyota parts on the GT86 are actually Subaru part numbered, which is even weirder. So that whole relationship is very crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a similar thing with the Supra.
yeah. They're sharing cars all over. Well, remember Fiat had a Miata for a while too, which was actually really cool.
That is actually cool.
My favorite rebadge is when Toyota and GM made the Matrix and the Vibe. So the Toyota had the Matrix and GM had the Vibe, which was like Pontiac. So it was all body cladded. They sold the Vibe in Japan as I think it was called the Volts. So this car they rebadged for America, they then brought back to Japan and rebadged it again. It was like the weirdest combo.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's pretty much going to happen more and more, isn't it? Particularly with all this new raft of platform sharing. If you look at the whole kind of Volkswagen Seat range, I don't know what you guys have over there, but unfortunately it's just getting quite samey now, isn't it? That's the problem. Cars are looking a lot more similar.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the Volkswagen group looks very similar, and apparently we are getting Cupra. By the end of the decade. Yeah. I find that odd because I feel like it would step on VW's toes, and VW doesn't do incredibly well in North America with its cars anyway. So I mean, it's that's the rumor, or maybe it's confirmed. I can't remember at this point, but I mean, I've driven a Cupra. It's fine. It was a Tiguan, essentially.
What we're getting over here at the moment, we're getting all the Chinese manufacturers arriving, which is very interesting. And I drove an Xpeng the other day, a G6. And I have to say, really good car. If you just want to get to work and drive up and down the motorway, I think it's got like 240 miles range. If transport is your aim, it is an absolutely fabulous thing. If you just want to get between point A and point B, I couldn't fault it in any way. It's just the lack of involvement for a lot of these cars for me is just where it all falls down.
Yeah. In North America, we're getting more of the weird partnership badge engineered, like Honda's making a EV off of a GM platform and whatnot. We don't really have the Inter brand as much. Like we lived through the 80s and 90s where GM had one car sold by 6 manufacturers that all just had a different grille. So those days are long gone. But you're right, you get these weird relationships. But we should probably let you go and enjoy your weekend because it's getting a bit late. Unless Kyle has any last questions.
I mean, I was going to go back and ask when you were asking if Paul had owned any of particularly rare brands. I was going to ask about an Australian Chrysler because I know those were their own kind of thing in the 70s. But
again, I've seen them, admired them, always wanted one, never owned one. To be fair, and this Plymouth Belvedere that I've bought as well, I've not picked it up yet. I bought it from a really nice guy, a car collector friend, before Christmas. And going back, where did you store your car? So I paid him for it. Obviously, that's the polite thing to do. I was like, are you in a rush for me to pick this up? He's like, no, you come and get it when the weather's nice and the salt's gone. And to be fair, here we are just about to go into March and I haven't collected it yet. So I better go and fetch it.
Well, if he has any other things to do, take your time.
Exactly. That is the car collectors where anyone that's going to give you even 2 months of free storage, just you take it always. That's the way it works.
Yeah. From his side, he sold the car and he has the money and he still gets to look at it. So
he's got the money and the car. Yeah, he's winning in life.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on. And if next time I make it over to the UK, I definitely have to come see some of these cars. Maybe I'll try to partner it up with like a Goodwood trip or something.
Yeah, do it. Well, I'm always down the Goodwood. So yeah, let me know when you're coming over, either of you, and obviously come and see me.
Sounds great.
Sounds great.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks again, Paul.
Take care, guys.
All right. Well, it's been a kind of a long episode, but we had a lot of good conversations. I mean, we could have talked to Paul probably for 7 hours, but that podcast probably wouldn't get much traffic. So it's a good thing we didn't. So, Kyle, what have you been up to this week?
Well, this week I've just been staying at home and driving a big orange Porsche for the week. I have hold on, it's a long name. Porsche Panamera 4SE Hybrid. Yeah. So it is the plug-in hybrid version of Porsche's sedan. It has a little less power than the previous one because it took a year off and got improved batteries. So it has more electric range, which I think is fine. And honestly, it's 16 horsepower less. So you're still left with over 500. It's probably okay.
You're not going to feel that.
No.
In a car that heavy either.
No.
Well, I've had a dark green Toyota GR86 Hakone edition, which I was so excited to drive, and then I got the plague, and I've been pretty much indoors and in bed for the last couple of days. But today I'm ready to bounce back, so get some driving this weekend because it's such a fun car. Everyone knows what a GR86 is. There's no point in like reviewing that car, but I want to see if this package is worth it. And I'm not going to say.
Yeah, I mean it's all of them are just so affordable. Even these special editions that they do it right. Unlike Ford that do some special editions and charge a lot of money. Yeah, and then Mike, what are we doing next week?
So next week again we are in our own cars. I am going to have another GR. I'm doing the GR tour, and this time it's going to be the Corolla with the auto, which I'm very interested because the manual, remember we have said a couple times, is like an STI with this very mechanical 6-speed and the drivetrain and everything. There never was an automatic STI. There's automatic WRXs and even the high-end WRXs like the S20s and all that. They never had autos. So I want to see what that kind of vehicle is like. I mean, the Evo had the dual clutch, but this is just an auto too. So
Hmm.
I'll have it for a whole week, and the snow's melting, so I can actually drive it around a bit. Oh, and it's bright red, so you'll see me coming.
Excellent.
What are you driving?
I'm sticking with unusually colored Porsches. So I am in a facelifted 911, but not the one with the hybrid powertrain. I'm actually in the base engine, and it's a convertible, and it's this very unusual pastel but desaturated yellow that I've never seen before. So I'm very curious about it, and I'm also just curious to see. This is possibly the least enthusiast 911. Right? It's the
Those
convertible,
cells.
it's the base engine. Yeah, and so I'm just like, what does this mean in 2025? What does this version of the 911 mean? And it's been a little while since I've driven one. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to. And like you said, it's getting warmer, so it's perfect convertible weather.
Yeah, I better see some video with the roof down and the toucan and enjoying it. I'm picturing the color like remember the original 02 or 03 WRX that came in yellow, but like it faded within a year or two of being in the sun. It became very light.
So it's close to that, but there's a little more green mixed into it that makes it very strange.
I'll have to see this in person. We can put the bright flashy car and the 911 beside it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
All right. Well, we'll have some more comparisons and reviews and news next week. Thank you for joining us. This has been the Auto Guide Show, brought to you by eBay Motors, and we will see you later.
So long, everybody.
Picture this. You're halfway through a DIY car fix, tools scattered everywhere, and boom, you realize you're missing a part. It's okay, because you know whatever it is, it's on eBay. They've got everything: brakes, headlights, cold air intakes, whatever you need, and it's guaranteed to fit, which means no more crossing your fingers and hoping you ordered the right thing. All the parts you need at the prices you'll love, guaranteed fit every time. eBay, things people love.